I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is Project Architect 2. Now, after today, I don't think I will ever be the same, especially now after I understand how the Mega Cells mod works. And this is specifically related to compressing items. You know, all of those like 9 times, 8 times, 7 times, 6 times, 5 times compressed blocks, and so on and so forth. And if you've ever had to craft some of those up, you might realize how actually insanely long it takes to craft those. Well, with Mega, it can happen nearly instantaneously. Now, we're gonna need something like this today because I have a problem that I need to solve. And that is, if we're going to be building out alloys, right? I actually want to take some of our ingots that we have compressed up from here, and I want to take these out and I want to use them for that task and just dump them into my applied energetic system. Now, the problem that comes with this is I would have to make a decrafting recipe for every single one of these ingots for all of the types all the way down. And that sounds like a task that's no fun. So I was wondering if there was a way to do this and, well, make it easy. And there is, and that's why we're going to be talking a little bit about Mega Cells and how it works. I did a little bit of testing to try and figure out exactly how this functions. And let me tell you, it is very simple for as powerful as it is going to be. Now, before we do that, I do want to mention something real quick that is actually very, very important. And you may be playing this, and if you're at this point in the pack and you're placing down a ton of EMC links and you have everything pulling out of here incredibly fast, keep in mind that you might not be able to open up your transmutation tablet anymore without crashing. This is actually a bug that we sent a report off on to ProjectE to see if they could potentially fix this. But if there are a ton of items being pulled out of your links, it is updating your EMC values incredibly quick. And in doing so, causes the tablet to constantly check how many items or what items it needs to be displaying, and so on and so forth when you have this open, thus lowering your FPS by a tremendous amount due to all of the processing requests, essentially. And so what will happen is if you have a lot of these running, like I do at my current point in my world, you will just crash. There's actually no getting around that. So keep in mind, if you are crashing, just remove the EMC links that are being pulled out of from, for example, with like these infinity pipe upgrades, or even the ones that are being pulled out with laser IO. So yeah, that will actually solve the problem and allow you to get back into your transmutation tablet. But to be fair, you only really need access to your transmutation tablet at this point just to essentially fill a client star. So make sure you just have a high tier client star, fill that bad boy up, and you really don't even have to worry about opening up your transmutation tablet, since you can access everything from any of your storage systems that you're using. But hopefully this gets fixed in the future. Until then, well, we're just going to have to live with not being able to open our transmutation tablet at all. Well, unless I break all of my EMC links, which I would prefer not doing. So now back to Mega Cells and how we're actually going to use this to auto compress and decompress blocks and build recipes for them automatically. This is actually kind of awesome. Like I really wish I could express even more how cool this is, and how powerful it is, and how little documentation exists for this mod yet. I think it is planned to have integration into this mod with like the Holding W, the Ponder system that it actually exists for regular applied energistics. But for right now, you really just have what is limited on the CurseForge page. But I'm gonna do my best to explain this. So what you're going to need to get this to work is you're gonna need a mega bulk item storage cell. So this is incredibly important. You're gonna need these. These are kind of expensive. They do cost spatial components. They also cost like all the way up to 3 256K components. But when you do craft this, this is essentially an infinite storage disk that holds one type of item. So let's do copper. So let's take some copper ingots, and we just need to define inside of this card what we're storing. And we're also going to need something else from Mega. We are going to need a compression card. So the compression card is going to allow this Mega Cell to interact with our Mega decompression module, which I'm going to talk about here in a second. So let's first make our cell that is going to be an infinite storage cell for copper ingots. So I'm gonna place this in here, define what can be stored in here in this one slot, and then up in the top, I'm gonna put my compression card. So now we have a mega bulk item storage cell that can store an infinite amount of copper ingots. And it needs to go inside of a drive. And this drive is going to need to be a higher priority. And I'm already using these top two right here for higher priorities already for voiding items, right? So these are cards that will void items at a certain point. But if I put this in here, now any copper that goes in here will end up filling up this cell because of that higher priority. Now, what's really powerful is whenever you place this mega decompression module onto your network. So all I have to do is have an empty channel on a regular cable, place it on, and what it's going to do is now build the recipes for all of the available upcrafts and downcrafts, including going down to nuggets, for copper. But it's only going to work for items that are stored specifically in this cell. So let's go do something real quick, because right now I have copper that shows up from our ore processing that is inside of our mechanism area. And I'll show you this to make it super, super simple to understand. I'm going to go ahead and quickly remove, if I right click here, put this in remove mode, and I'm just going to remove copper from our network. So now when we look up copper, we should not see any copper ingots. Notice there is nothing right here. We don't have any copper blocks or anything like that. So we should be good. And we don't have any. So what I can do is go grab one of those compressed blocks from back at the lab. So let's go grab a compressed block, and this will automatically convert compressed blocks over. So I just need to find copper. That's silver, tin, raw gold, nickel, let's see, osmium, zinc, copper. Okay, so here's our copper. So right here, I'll just grab one of these 3 times compressed, but I could grab a 7 times compressed. And I will take that 3 times compressed. And now when I put it inside of my AE system, it should work. I'm also going to set this to a higher priority, set it to like 20 or whatever, just to make sure that that goes through this first. And so now with that set, whenever I place this in, we're going to notice some things change to all of these crafts. By the way, notice that it says craft because it built automatically the crafts for the compression and decompression. It's just absolutely amazing. So I place this in. We now have 1 3 times setting here. But you may be like, well, where's my ingots? Well, they're actually stored in here. And you can see we have 6,000 ingots that were just deposited and automatically converted from that 3 times compressed. This is just beautiful. Now, if I add this 1 more copper ingot, we might notice that some values change. Now we have 1 in here. So what this does is it will automatically compress up to the highest that it can, leaving all of the remainder. So you may see that. But what we can actually do is just immediately pull out ingots directly from here. I'm not requesting a craft. It is just pulling it out. And then in that process, we're going to notice that, well, we no longer have a 3 times anymore. Now we have 8 of the 2 times, and then we have some remainders, and we're going to continue to have those remainders for the compressed. And so what this means is we'll always have access to the top tier that we have available to us, and we can always request and keep them available. Now, what makes this insanely powerful is if I take one of these 7 times, for example, out of here, right? I take a 7 times compressed block and I put this in, that's going to immediately be converted into millions of these ingots instantaneously. Putting that inside my storage, I look here, I now have 43 million ingots of copper that are now accessible inside of our storage. And by accessible, I mean that anytime we set up a system that needs to export those, it should be able to automatically export them out. So let's get an exporter. And I don't even know if we need, with this system, I don't know if we need anything. Let's do a barrel. And I just want to try this because we may have to have a requesting card. So this is also me kind of experimenting a little bit because I just learned about this today. This has just been an insane thing to learn. But yeah, we can have a cable out here, place a barrel, have an export bus, and copper is what we want to export. And you can notice it sent out the one that we had. So actually, yeah, it doesn't even need it. It knows we have copper. And so it's not even pulling the request. I don't think, unless these were just remainders, which we shouldn't have any remainders. I can add some acceleration cards. And let's see. No. So it doesn't even need a crafting card. It's just going to automatically do the conversion immediately upon request. That is amazing. Notice, by the way, we don't have any external. This is coming straight out of that bulk cell that we have here. So that means for any material that we need to compress up or compress down, we can do it with this, and it will happen nearly instantaneously. That means anytime we export or insert anything into our network, it'll automatically compress up to the highest tier, which is going to be pretty useful considering there's a lot of things that actually need to be compressed and well sent to our system. And since this doesn't require us to really deal with our crafting solution for this, yeah, we're going to let this kind of relax. We don't have to worry about this because even though these are fast, it would still take an incredibly large amount of time to compress something up to a 9x block, whereas this will work instantly. And so now with all of that, I should be able to now build a cell for every single type of ingot that we actually have processing in huge numbers. So now that we have an understanding of how the mega cells work and the bulk storage, we can now start to focus a little bit more on some of the other tasks. So that was just essentially a very, very useful tool that is going to help us in our process here. So if I dive back into the quest, I do want to talk about some things that I've done. So I've recently changed a few of these quests and made them a bit more realistic. I'm still in the process of just making sure that these feel good and making sure their values are good. So instead of 9x for everything, I definitely went through and I did some more calculations based on what I've already done in the pack, trying to figure out what actually feels good as a number, to not be too grindy and not actually just take a long period of time to do. I don't want this to take a long time, but I do want it to kind of be a nice balance of, okay, we need infrastructure, just don't need to wait a whole long time for that infrastructure to function. So with that in mind, I've sort of set these values to where I feel they are good. And even keeping in mind, like, for example, this industrial iron, that this needs to be processed through create stuff, and create stuff can be fairly slow. So I'm keeping those things in mind, and all of these values have definitely changed. Not only that, but I did get some interesting comments about some of the quests that were inside the Wild Hunt, specifically related to the Chaos Guardian and also to killing the dragon. So in those regards, all of this stuff has been kind of changed, and I even changed over here the blobs. So now it's an item amount that is also kind of showing, hey, you can put these guys in containment jars and farm them. And then also in the regards to ours and containment jars, this is now set up because this is a renewable source of Chaos Guardians. So what you can do is contain a Chaos Guardian, which I think is a kind of a cool thing. And you can do this on servers and put it in a containment jar because the Chaos Guardian will respawn after this has been done. So if you just leave the area, when somebody comes back to it, the Chaos Guardian will actually respawn given a few minutes. So that's a kind of a nice renewable way. And then also, instead of killing the dragon, instead you get to do this fun queen related dragon head quest for farming the queen. And there's a ton of different new things that you can do. And I also went through the Beyond Creative and we kind of played around with some values here and also made it so now you can put certain items that weren't available before into the bin. So you can generate a ton of EMC from the bin, and it is just insane amounts. So worrying about this is probably not a big deal anymore, where you will need a certain amount of EMC in order to get those items. But outside of that, a lot of these other values have been kind of looked at and changed and thought about a lot. I thought about these values a whole bunch, and I feel like these are actually all set to a pretty comfortable value for kind of in-game challenges, which is what they're supposed to be. So now with that in mind, we need to take a look, which is what I'm working is under the pressure section, and I'm working on some of the hardest things to do right now. And this is one of the hardest things, I think, is the main thing, which was getting the ingots, which I said these all 7 times, which we do have, so we can now complete all of these. But I also need to keep in mind the alloys, which are kind of hard to make as well. So all of these values have been changed, and also the wood has now been changed to a lower tier. So these are kind of significant. 9 times is just a lot. I understand that that was probably something that scared a lot of people whenever they originally seen that. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more like 3 billion items is just an insane number to generate when this game is based on ticks. And we also don't want to create lag for people. And I don't want this in-game challenge to be something that can't be done if you're on a lower NPC. So just kind of something to keep in mind. But we're working on this today. So I need to work on this. And so this means I need to set up some infrastructure for this, but having that compressed access made this so much easier. And to be able to explain why is because now we can actually use applied energistics for this automation, because we have access to all of those blocks on demand, or all of those ingots on demand. We can now use them, and we should be able to set up some pretty interesting infrastructure for generating all of these alloys. So for this, instead of using EMC links for this setup, I'm actually going to utilize applied energistics, since it is also connected to our EMC network. So the way that I want to go about doing this is by heading back into the thermal area. And I've already set up a new cable that has a fresh 32 channels to sort of play with right here. So you can see I have a fresh set of 32 channels that are running all the way up here, ready to go. And we're going to utilize more of our buildings for this automation. So most of these alloys, by the way, they can be done with thermal. So we can actually have these made in thermal. And that may not seem like the fastest way to do it, because these do have crafting recipes technically for all of them. But I was thinking that it might be an interesting and easier way to just kind of set and forget. And also with scalability, if we were to actually use the smelter for these. So like I said, these go all the way back until we get to the invar, and notice that right here, we do have an induction smelter recipe, and it's actually not too bad. But what's going to make this really powerful is our use of the creative upgrades for our machines in thermal. And now I've already batched a few of them up, because these right here do take a long time to craft, because each one of them requires a creative cube, and the creative cubes just take a lot of resources. So I have 10 of them ready to go. I think we're only going to need 8. These are the items right here. This is all of the alloys, right? Steel is going to be in its own category, and also industrial iron is going to be its own category. So all these other ones, which I believe there are 8 of them, can be processed inside of the induction smelter. So aligning these up, we should be able to set these here, and we're going to have the induction smelter set directly on top of the barrel with one of these fancy compacting upgrades. And these compacting upgrades are so good. And so these are going to be very, very helpful for just having it passively run and just passively compacting. So I'm going to place these induction smelters directly on top. And the good part about these induction smelters, or any of the thermal machines, is I did some testing, and it doesn't seem any slower to use the integrated in and output than it is actually using pipes to send the items in, whereas some other machines actually have a limitation on that. These seem to pull items in just as fast as we can actually pipe the items in. So there's actually no configuration change there, allowing us to have this very, very compact, really. So we can have this set up here, just like so. And what I want to do is have applied energistics right here on the top. And because we have 8, this is going to use a perfect line of cables. Now, how are we going to supply the items that are needed? Well, if we take a look at applied energistics, we have one great option that should always keep it in stock. And that is going to be the ME interface, allowing us to have multiple things that can be in stock at once, allowing the induction smelter to keep those things in stock here. So I just need to place the interfaces like this, connected up to our cable line. Of course, I'll make this look a little bit nicer after the fact, but that's almost it. We need to go back into thermal, and I do want to grab my settings copier, which is this red paper right here. I think shift right clicking in the air clears it. And so what we'll do is we'll have auto enabled right here, and we'll have the input set up and the output set to the bottom. And that should be pretty straightforward there. That's nothing else we should have to worry about. And I think this also can copy the upgrades. So if I put the upgrades in here, I think this might automatically work. So shift right click, or right click. There we go. That's copied. And then right click to paste. And does that automatically copy the augments? It does not. So it just copies the settings, which is more than fine. And there we go. And then I just have to right click the upgrades in here. And these don't require energy. These upgrades make this go as fast as this can go. And then it also doesn't require any energy for the operation. So these creative upgrades are so good for this. And what a use for this as well. Now, I don't think you have to prompt it with a little bit of RF to get them to work. Let's actually try some iron real quick. So we'll pull out some iron, and then we'll also do invar. And let's see. Oh, not invar. We need nickel. So iron and nickel. We put those in here. Notice it is not operating just yet, and I think it's because you have to jump it with a little bit of power. So let's try a gate. And there it goes. Once it has that initial power, it no longer uses power anymore. But you do kind of have to jump start it. So I'm going to put these on here for right now to let them charge up. And then it should work. So let's grab iron as we just ran out. Oh, by the way, notice how fast that went. So that buffer's full. Now this buffer should no longer dip down. And I did remove the power from it. And it's now compressing the blocks down here incredibly fast. So what we need to do is we just need to provide the required items that are for each of these crafts just into the top of the interface. And as soon as we do this, for example, nickel and iron, that should keep that in stock. This is running. And you can see it is compressing incredibly fast because each one of these operations is producing 3, and it is going so fast you can't even see the bar operating. But you can definitely see it ticking up just like so. Now, something else to mention about this, what you could also do is have 4 of these machines that are surrounded by each other. It would require a bit more channels, but just surround this barrel with all of the 4 induction smelters, and that would go 4 times as fast, essentially generating these even faster. But I don't think we're going to need this. I'm going to let this run for a little while, and we'll be able to see how quickly this is going to work. But we might have to kind of change this up and do that kind of setup to make it even faster. Now, a couple of these are going to require a crafting card. For example, to get diamond dust, there has to be a crafting card for this. And I'm going to set this to 64, and I don't know if it's going to request 64 every time, but that should start to build up. I might have to modify this recipe to make it a bit faster at crafting, because that is probably going to have a hard time keeping up. But we'll put that in. And so now that is running, and we now have Indirium automated. Yes, and notice this is going to run out pretty darn quick. This is going to be one that is going to require a bit more of this dust, and also probably a creative card inside of our crafter that's making this. Now, right here is where I had my diamonds processing, but this pattern only does 1 item at a time, which is not going to cut it. So I'm going to place it inside my pattern modifier, and I'm going to increase this all the way up until it should be 64, which is how much that machine can hold. And so whenever I put this to 64, that should now fill all of these slots with 64 diamonds upon request. It should anyways. It hasn't started back up yet as far as I can see, but that should work by having 64 diamonds turned to 64 dust. Now, I tried checking on my exporters here, and it just wasn't fast enough. And for some reason, it wasn't actually looping like you would kind of expect it to. So I noticed that the pattern provider, even in blocking mode, whenever it has a single slot right here that can accept like 64 items, it's just not looping around like many of the other machines do. So instead, to make sure this is staying consistent, I went ahead and I have another pulverizer here, and it has that creative upgrade in it. So this should be able to handle this. We just need to export diamonds and make sure it has speed upgrades. And so now that should be able to pulverize and send into the induction smelter. We have to make sure that there is an insert in the back, and that should keep that supplied. Beautiful. And that should now stay consistently running. Oh, perfect. Man, I tell you what, nothing's more satisfying than getting automation like this set up and running. And just by looking at this, while I was trying to solve that, we already have a 4 times compressed bronze. So I think this is going to be producing plenty fast enough. Because for most of these blocks, we essentially just need a 5 times compressed block. So we should be pretty well off here. This will definitely generate. Now, there are 2 other alloys that we are going to need a little bit of, and that is getting some create infrastructure set up to produce the industrial iron blocks. And we also need 5 times compressed steel. Now, steel is a pretty interesting one because we can actually produce steel, believe it or not, with the tome of Alcastry. So I was thinking, let me go ahead and store this into our dimension, and let's pull in our Alcastry tome, if I'm saying that right, our tome of Alcastry world, which is the Crafter Madness. Very, very laggy little area here, but if we load this in, what I might be able to do, since I already have 1.5 million nether stars, which is more than I'm going to need, I can actually swap this out. So I can go in here and change like one of these to be like a barrel with a compression upgrade, and we can convert this into producing steel instead of nether stars. Now to do this, I think I'm going to need to pass under here real quick, and I'm going to have to unlink the laser IO connections. So this one right here, I think shift right click and then right click. That will delink these two. So now these two are disconnected from one another. And we already have that card that sends into the bottom here. So all we really have to do is remove this nether star recipe and replace it with steel. So if I put a steel ingot here, that should work. But I'm also going to have to change this. So I'm going to set this to on to activate for all of these. So that way I can actually modify this. And I don't think I have to worry about the... Actually, I'm going to remove this as well, that EMC link. And yeah, I'm going to have to go in each one of these and basically swap out where there's nether stars and swap that out for the steel. So to do this pretty easy, I can remove these out of here and I can shift and right click after pulling this out, or shift and punch actually, shift and left click. And it seems like that pulls that steel out and allows me to swap its position. There we go. Beautiful. And then all I need to do is go into this recipe here and replace the star with steel. And that's basically it. Okay, beautiful. And we are going to be duping some steel with the tome, which is very, very powerful, by the way. Oh man, so that is steel, because otherwise producing steel would be a pretty rough task, I think. But because of this, oh man, we can produce this so fast. All right, so time for me to grab the EMC link and place that down. And then let's go ahead and get our barrel placed down here, so it has somewhere to send items, and make sure that compression upgrade's in there. So now as soon as I do this and I do some redstone blocks, we should be ready to rock and roll. Place that in. That should be duping. Oh, that's right. We have to give it some steel to play with first. But as soon as we give it a stack, it should hopefully be looping. Maybe not. I'm trying to figure out why it's not. Oh, that's right. We didn't turn the redstone back on. So as soon as I turn the redstone back to ignored, this should kick back off. Oh, and should work flawlessly. Perfect. Now we can see it working. And voila, before we know it, we're going to have plenty of steel blocks built up. Oh, and by the way, this is going to be another fantastic block because steel can take a long time to produce. So having it in abundance from one of those mega cards, oh, that would be fantastic. So now we're on to the production of industrial iron. So industrial iron is going to need blaze burners, and they're going to need to be lit. Now we have plenty of easy ways of keeping blaze burners lit with the fluids that we have available to us, and we have it in abundant supply. So keeping blaze burner lit is pretty easy, and it just needs to be heated. So you can actually use any tier of blaze burner to actually keep this sustained. But we just need to feed the compactors iron, and we need to make sure it has industrial iron as the recipe, because this actually might be able to make iron blocks. So we might run into that issue because I've dealt with that in Create before. But we just need a chain of these pumping the iron out, turning it into industrial iron. And we already have motors, so supplying this with fast stress shouldn't be too hard. Now I need to turn these empty blaze spawners into regular blaze spawners. So to do this, just place down a blaze spawner, and I'll just right click a whole bunch of times. Perfect. And then I can pick this back up with Silk Touch for later. And I was thinking about having 9 of these, since that does turn it into one single block. So having 9 of these up and running would be good, but this space right here is only 8 blocks. So I can use the cut paste tool. I'm gonna right click, actually, I'm gonna right click here and then shift right click here. And that selects this area. And what I can do is go to cut. That'll make sure to cut all of that. And it was placed right here. So we just need to go in here and make sure that's set out. And this should paste it one over whenever I right click. Or so I hope. Oh. Oh, it placed it completely underground. That's because of this position I selected first, isn't it? Oh, goofy me. Okay, so I guess what I can do instead, go back into cut mode. It's due to the rendering. It's not rendering everything 100% here. I'll place a hopper here and then shift right click. And then I do need to change the settings on the other side. Wrong side. Yeah, it's like this, and then this gets moved back. Okay. Then confirm, then cut. Okay, and then I should be able to replace this because it did dig a little bit of a hole here. So there we go. Something to place it on, right click, and there. That moved it one over, which is perfect. Giving me a little bit of space. So now essentially I'll have my blaze burners down here. Then we'll have basins that are on top of that. And then some mechanical presses, and I want them to be faced in this direction so they'll be all chained to one another. So we only need one source that is running through here. So we don't have to have like chain drives in the back. We'll just power it from this one side over here. So that should be functional here. Now I don't know if this motor can power all of those in one go. So let's grab a gearbox. And what I can do is test that real quick by placing a gearbox on the outside. So if I place a gearbox right here, I can then place the motor on the outside, power that up, and notice there is some stress. Okay, so this does not have enough stress units to power this at that level. So I actually wonder how many of these it would take. So after a little bit of testing, turns out that I actually only need 2 to be able to power 9 of these. And that will also work at max speed. So to do this, I'm using vertical gearboxes. I'm going to place them on top of each other. Now, when you do this, you got to keep in mind that one is spinning one direction. That means this is spinning in the opposite. So we have to switch the direction of at least one of them. There we go. So now they're both spinning in opposite directions, but they will be technically spinning together. So otherwise they'll just pop off and break. So if you're having that problem, that is why. So now both of those together, this is now spinning, this whole line is now spinning, and that means this should work. Now, the other part is we got to get all of these converted into ones that accept fluids. So I feed them a straw, and these guys will all be super happy and ready to start taking fluids. And then I did this, by the way, by just placing in a bamboo inside of a rolling mill, and that gives you the straw that you need. Now, inside the combiner real quick, I'm going to combine the final star with a tank, get myself another creative tank. That way I can use creative fluid to power all of my blaze burners. And so for this, I just grabbed out some refined fuel with the gauge dropper, which allows me to pull out a little bit. And that means I should be able to place that inside of here. Like so. And now I have an infinite amount of refined fuel. And if you didn't know, refined fuel is pretty darn powerful with blaze burners, allowing it to stay up for 20 minutes superheated. Now, yes, there is a creative blaze cake that would allow you to set these all to the values that you want them to be, and that blaze cake is pretty nice as well. But I do like the idea of using the creative tank in providing these with fluids. Ooh, and this is also going to allow me to try out the facading. So I'm going to connect all of these like so. And I don't even think I'm going to need to put an upgrade on this. This is just going to work like so. They're all going to fill up. That noise is going to get incredibly annoying after a while, but there we go. They are all filled up. And what I can do is grab some framed blocks, and I can actually use this to cover these up. By shift right clicking, I can apply these frames and make it look like they never even existed by adding some of these tough bricks. This right here is fantastic. I think it's this right here. You cannot... Oh, wait, I'm using the wrong block. There we go. Just like that. Perfect. And these are getting swapped over just like so. Oh, that's so cool. Now, I do want to try something out. I just want to toss a stack of iron in here and see if this converts into iron blocks. Okay. So notice how this is converting into iron blocks. Oh, interesting. So what we could do is it looks like iron blocks can be converted directly into the iron. Is that what I'm seeing there? Oh, it can be. So we can just automatically make like blocks of industrial iron this way instead of going the route of making it individually like this. Oh, because I was going to use iron ingots, but this actually changes things. So if you just put blocks in here, notice it still has an issue, right? It's compressing, and we don't want it to do that. Now, the way that you can actually fix this and make it not do that is by setting the recipe on all of these. So the way you would set a recipe like this is by either taking the actual item and placing them on here, or if you don't already have the item, you can actually use a create filter. And this is a great way to set your recipe. Just place it inside your filter, place the filter in this outside slot here. But because we already have the industrial iron, we can go ahead and actually just use it as the filter. And this will guarantee that that is the only item or recipe that it will use in the craft. Very, very nice. Now to make this super clean, oh, this is where the fun actually happens. So to be able to interact with these, I actually want to move the interactions up top. And we can do this by entangling the basins. So up top, we're going to have all of these entangled blocks. Make sure to remove this. There we go. And these are all going to be associated with the one that is the basin that is directly underneath them. Just like so. Now I've ran some cable over here from our little node that we have right here, the wireless connector for Applied Energistics. And this is how we're going to import the iron in. So I'm just going to tap into this, set the iron, and then have it piped in. But we do have to filter what is actually coming out of here. Because believe it or not, you can actually pull the input out of the basin. So we have to be very specific with this. And knowing that, I can go ahead and set some filters. So I'm going to use this one pipe right here to just go ahead and assign these filters. I really wish we could assign the filters directly from the actual upgrade card, but instead we have to put it in here to actually do that upgrading. So I'm going to add the iron, and I've got to create a card like this for every single one. Just setting it to whitelist and making sure we're whitelisting, only pulling out the industrial iron. Now, in the process of setting all of this up and getting all of this infrastructure set up, I did notice something inside while I was looking at the recipes here, and was mentioned to me over on the Discord. You can just get this from the stone cutter for 1 iron ingot. Now, this was not intended, and I might actually remove the recipes for this. I know it is in place at the moment, but I think the update, by the time you're getting this video, the update will actually have this removed. But yeah, this was in here. So those of you who've already done this and done it through this method, yeah, good on you for actually looking through the tabs here, because I completely missed that. That's insane. But this is the intended method for getting these blocks, and I also even lowered the values for this. So this is still going to be the intended way. I'm going to go ahead and place these in right here, and this doesn't need to be that fast, honestly. Like the diamond upgrade is probably kind of overkill for how quickly we're going to be sending these iron blocks. So remember, it auto compresses for us. So I'm almost positive if I set the iron blocks here, set it to 64, for example, I keep disabling that, then we should be auto sending as soon as I turn this on, and this should start immediately pressing. So I'm going to place that in, shift right click. They're all in, and boy, oh boy, is that loud. But they are all working. And let me go ahead and do create. Oh my gosh. Yeah, create press activation. That's the loud one. So now they're all working. It looks so goofy. But we should see those blocks going inside of that barrel now. Just like that, and they're all getting compressed up. And we don't need a lot of these, by the way. So this was just kind of an interesting thing to kind of set up and automate. Now, I kind of want these synchronized in a very particular way. And so I think I can actually get this to synchronize if I just place in the presses. I do have to check here. Oh, these ended up going in here. Pull those presses out. Beautiful. I don't know how we got 13 of them in here, but interesting. So what I should be able to do now is place these in, and they're going to go in the order that I place them in. So 3, 2, 1. And they're kind of there. Kind of doing the wave, which is kind of what I wanted. Yeah, that looks a whole lot cooler. And so now, after letting this run for a little bit while I was working on some other things, Oh boy, we have more than enough. I have the industrial iron blocks set to 5 times, so we should have plenty of those, and this actually has taken no time at all. So by the time that I finish working on some other projects, we'll have more than enough of those resources ready to go to be turned in. Now, before we end today's episode, we can actually go here, and we should be able to turn in at least one of each of these blocks. Oh man, and these are all submit quests. So I should be able to submit all of these, and we can actually have one of our first major quests done, and that is going to be all for these individual ingot components. And so after getting that collected, I now get to go in here. The metallurgic radiation will take this and submit all of these. Now I haven't done the netherite, so that is going to be one of the only ones holding us back, but that honestly shouldn't be too long. We'll get that done in another episode. But all of these getting submitted, it did take them out of my inventory, and now we've almost finished that section. This one will also be done very, very soon as well, and we just have to work on the netherite, and most of these other things, by the way, have EMC. So a ton of these other ones have all EMC crafts. We have to get all of the wood processed up, and we have to get these started, which are 5 times blocks of all of the individual power stuff. That's a big task on its own. And then we also have the draconium, the awakened draconium, which just requires some smelting. So all of this should be fairly easy to complete very soon, including the fallen stars, which just require like several thousand nether stars in order to fully complete that. But we'll be getting there. The andesite crafts, we should be able to also get that. Oh, there's just a lot to work on, and I am super excited for this. So if you've enjoyed this extra long episode, be sure to click that subscribe button, of course, if you haven't already, and give this video a huge thumbs up, especially if you learned something, whether that was about mega cells or about diving into create or even thermal. Guys, thank you so very much, and if you wouldn't mind sticking around for the end, because I do like to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that huge thanks is going to go out to Leo2311. And thank you so much, by the way, for amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting in one of the best ways possible. I thank you so very much, and I thank all of you so much for watching as well. I'll see you in the next one, and I can't say it enough, thanks for watching. Bye!